we are grateful to have all of your beautiful faces in the crowd today, coming to work on something that is so important for our community, and that is free meals at school. So I'm Sarah Miliantha-Laffin, Millie, from HSTA, joining my partners that brought this today and made this happen, who have been advocating for this issue for so long, and that includes Hawaii Appleseed, Hawaii Hunger Action Network, and the Hawaii Public Health Institute. We're here to ask our leaders to help us feed our keiki. It means so much to see members of our community come together to talk about something that affects our keiki: access to free, nutritious school meals, regardless of whether a child has money in their meal account or not. And as a teacher, I see firsthand how food insecurity impacts my students. So I've told a few stories this year as we've had bills in the legislature for feeding students. And one story that happened to me a few weeks ago, I teach middle school at Alima Intermediate in Ewa Beach, 76 South, yeah. And at school, it was lunch, and a little boy knocked on my door and said, "Miss, you gotta come quick. My friend is upset." And so I get to the door, and I see this boy, and he's a foot taller than me, and his hands are clenched at his sides, and he is huffing and puffing, and if you are a teacher, you have seen that moment. And his friend explained that he didn't have enough he didn't have enough money in his lunch account. So when he got to the line to get his tray of food, the attendant took the tray back. So this child not only did not get a meal, he was also shamed in front of his peers. And the other student who brought him to me said, "Miss, I know you give the kids food. Can you get him something for lunch?" And those interactions happen every day in our public schools, which is why this legislation is so critical and why we're here today. I know I said as we got started, how many in the audience are teachers or former teachers? Look at all those hands. Thanks for being here. Okay, of those hands, how many of you have from your own pocket fed your students? I don't know any teacher who hasn't. Mahalo, teachers. Give them some love, please. So this morning isn't just a conversation, it's a call to action. And for the 4th consecutive year, we're asking our state leaders to pass legislation that would make school meals free for all, and this year is our year. I'm gonna say that again, this year is our year. What do you think? Yes. There is a bill currently going through the legislature that a lot of these people in this room that you see have worked really, really hard to make happen, and that's Senate Bill 1300. It would expand the access to free meals to those making under a living wage. Specifically, this bill would make meals free for those of us making under 300% of the federal poverty level by school year 2026-2027. For a family of 4, 300% of the federal poverty level. 300% means under $110,000 a year. This is about what a living wage is for a family of 4 in our state, and we think it's appropriate that children under that threshold eat for free. However, it does not help us get all the way to universal free meals. And that's why we need your help. There is still a chance we could get it amended to require that the Hawaii Department of Education feed all children by 2027-2028. Now, so here's the deal, and this is, again, in the fact of this being a call to action. This bill has to make its way through the House Committee on Finance and ultimately to the governor's desk. And we're gonna need help every step of the way. We're here today in this forum, in this event. We appreciate McKinley High School for having us. You're gonna hear from teachers, parents, students, and lawmakers who can speak to the impact of food insecurity and the solutions that are absolutely within our reach. Most importantly, we will discuss what we as a community can do to get that Senate Bill 1300 across the finish line to ensure that every child in our school has access to the meals that they do need to learn. So we are just gonna jump in and get started. Thank you again for being an amazing audience. Please, again, you are adults. I will not norm you like students. Please meet your needs. If you need to use restroom or take a call, please go ahead and do it outside our facility. But okay, for this next part, can I get the 3 students to come help me with something? Come here. Yes. Okay. So, we know, you're okay, come here. I'm gonna give you a job in just a minute, so come to me, you're okay. Just stand right there. Sorry, I didn't tell them this in advance, so that's kind of, teacher life. One thing we know that's happening, if you've seen the news, is the federal cuts to education are getting scary. as we're seeing it forward. We know that school meals are school supplies. I'm going to say that again. School meals are school supplies. Can you say that back to me? School meals are school supplies. Absolutely. It's one of the best things we have as teachers to make sure our students are learning. And what's happening right now, let's just call them shenanigans at the federal government level. Funding is at risk. So I have some signs. Now, there has been a lot of can I have you hold this one for me? Calls to abolish the U.S. Department of Education. This has been something people have been talking about. What we need people to understand that if this happens, there are severe consequences. So Hawaii gets $52 million a year in Title I funding. Can you go that way? That way. Well, actually, I'm going to rearrange you. Come this way. Come this way. She's doing great. We got great kids here. Yay. Okay. As a teacher, I'm very individual age, which I think people need to understand. So of that $52 million, it helps 96,000 of our most vulnerable students. That's a big deal. We also get $38 million in support for 20,000 kids who need IDEA services or special education services. So when we look at this, when we see this up here, this is really what we're here also talking about, because if these cuts happen, it just shows why it's so much more important that we pass this legislation in Hawaii to keep our kids fed. So we are lucky to have someone who is on the ground fighting for Hawaii at the federal level, and that awesome human flew all the way all night to get here to be with us today. So please give your aloha to Rep. Takuda, who's going to tell us what's going on at the federal level. Thank you. You guys can sit down.
Thank you. Well, aloha, everyone. Well, first of all, you know what? Can we have those signs back? Let's have the kids sit down and hold them. Oh, yes, they're like, wait, this wasn't in the script, Auntie. You didn't say we're going to have to do this the whole time. I think it's important that we understand something. Right now, what we've got in Washington, D.C. is shenanigans. Is that what you called it? Shenanigans. That's a real nice way of putting it. So we're going to keep it at that right now. But what I've been trying to explain to folks, that the very inhumane, egregious, destructive, devastating, find every bad word you can in the dictionary, cuts that they are trying to do right now have a very human face behind them. These are the faces. Multiply them by millions over for the entire country. Multiply them by hundreds of thousands right here in Hawaii. These are the faces behind the cuts, as well as the teachers who are doing everything they possibly can every day to help them. If we abolish the Department of Education, if we get rid of Title I funding, if we decimate IDEA, these are the faces that will be hurt. This is what the harm looks like if you get rid of such important funding. And let me tell you, I know for some of you, and I'm preaching to the choir here, there's been talk about how the states can take it over. The states can get the money directly. But just ask a teacher, ask a principal. That money was never enough. I admit that as a member of Congress. The money that the federal government gives for public education to require that every single child has access to free and appropriate public education has always been an unfunded mandate to the states and to schools. So to say that it would be enough, it has never been enough. And if we don't demand that the federal government get on board with supporting our youngest keiki, these would be the victims. And so I love to be very positive because I feel that way. I'm a proud public school graduate from Castle High School. I've got a teacher here. My husband and I walk the walk. We're both graduates together. Our two sons have spent their lives in public school, Kanu Elementary, King Intermediate, and now they're 9th and 11th graders. Mommy's terrified, by the way, at Castle High School because next will be college. But we commit to our schools. And I can tell you, like these little ones that are middle school right now, had it not been for public schools, had it not been for caring public school teachers that believed in me, as the child of a teenager in high school themselves, I would not be in Congress today. If it wasn't for our public schools, our teachers, Pell Perkins and Stafford, who gave me an opportunity to go to college, the very first in my family, I would not have had any of the opportunities I had today. And let me tell you something. Whether you're on free reduced lunch or not, whether you make the percentages or not, it is a struggle to live in Hawaii. We know that. That's unacceptable. It's something I take with me every time I fly back and forth, that we've got to make it easier. And as parents, as teachers, as students, the one thing we want to count on is at some point in the day we'll have a hot plate of food in front of us. And for too many of our kids, that free breakfast, that lunch is the only hot meals that they will have. They go home hungry. Weekends like this right now are hard. Spring break's coming up, they better hope they can find a program. Because if not, they're not sure where their next hot meal will be. And so right now, as we literally find Congress trying to decimate our safety net, which, by the way, is not just our schools, we are fighting and pushing back because they want to get rid of SNAP. They want to put $230 billion, not even million, billion dollars in cuts to SNAP. And we know that so many of our keiki right now rely on SNAP to eat. They want to cut Medicaid and CHIPS, which, by the way, 40% of keiki across this country rely on CHIPS for their health care. So if you can imagine, let's take the food off your table, the health care that keeps you well, what's left? Programs like this. No pressure on the lawmakers here. You've got amazing advocates right here. But it's going to mean the state's going to be that lifeline. We need the state right now while we are trying to fight the egregious cuts at the federal level to make sure that our keiki, our schools, can be that last little lifeline that we need to make sure that our kids are okay. And I'm going to end here because I actually want to really hear from these students, poor things. You can put that down now, but you know what I should see? Bring me those posters. We should put them up in Congress to remind people what's at stake here, what we're actually talking about. But I love what Kahu said, right? That there is life. There is learning when the opu is full. As you can tell, I'm a pretty much lifelong learner right here. But all jokes aside, there is life when the opu is full. We need to remember that before we can expect our kids to learn, our teachers to teach, our schools to do everything they need to do to help secure our brightest for the future that they deserve, we have to make sure that their opu is full. So thank you today. You have made our hearts full by being here, by being the advocate, by being the power, the action, the strength that we need right now during what does feel like dark times, but I promise you the sun will rise again on better days, and it will because we have got amazing people in this state, including all of you that are going to fight to make sure that every keiki's opu is full and they have every chance they can to learn. Mahalo, everyone, and I'll see you out there in the streets.
Thank you so much for being today. Thank you so much. Yeah, take this with you. Thank you so much. We're grateful again that you flew that red-eye flight all night to be with us. Once again, Congresswoman Jill Takuda. So we have speakers here to tell your story. We have students, we have teachers, we have community members, we have our leaders. We're all here for the same reason, and that's for our keiki. So we're going to go ahead and hear from them. First up, we are very blessed with us today to have Miss Asia. She is the Miss Hawaii Volunteer 2025. So Asia, please welcome.
Oh, wow, I have to go after that? That was great. Yeah, I'm nervous now. But anyways, aloha everyone. My name is Asiana Saragosa Torres, and I am humbled and honored to be your Miss Hawaii Volunteer 2025. This June, I will be representing our incredible state at the Miss Volunteer America pageant, and I'd like to take a moment to speak from the heart about something that is incredibly important to me. My platform, End the Silence, is dedicated to raising awareness around mental health, an issue that I hold close to my own heart due to my own personal experiences and my own struggles. And through my journey as a mental health advocate, I have come to deeply understand that many challenges that we face in our lives are connected to mental health. The issue that we are addressing here today is one that I believe is intimately tied to mental well-being, especially for our children here in Hawaii. Growing up, I was one of the children who relied on free lunch at school. I never had to worry about eating at school, but I did have to worry about eating food at home. And my mother, who is now sober, and she's been sober for 9 years, was battling alcoholism while I was growing up, and it was a constant struggle. And while she worked hard to recover, our family often found ourselves in different and difficult circumstances, basically. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. I didn't realize that was gonna make me so emotional trying to talk about this. School was my safe place, and not only for learning, but also for nourishment. And I was fortunate that our local programs provided me with lunch, but I remember the pain I felt seeing other kids unable to eat because their families didn't have enough money in their school accounts. And it broke my heart to see other children have their food taken back by administrators, and they were forced to sit there and watch everyone else eat. And sometimes I would share my lunch, even though I was hungry, because I couldn't bear to see them go hungry. And as I grew older, I came to understand the harsh reality of living in Hawaii, where the cost of living is high and many families live paycheck to paycheck. And I believe with all my heart that no child should ever have to experience the pain of hunger in schools. And without food, a child's mind cannot focus on their education. Instead, they are distracted by the growling of their stomachs, wondering if they will get enough to eat. But what's even more heartbreaking is the emotional toll that it takes, because these children, I feel, experience loneliness, shame, and exclusion, because they're not just hungry for food, they are also hungry for connection, for belonging, and for dignity. And I think we need to remember that children do not choose the circumstances that they are born into. They do not choose the families they are born into or the financial struggles that their parents may face. Children are vulnerable, and it is our responsibility as a community to ensure that no child is left behind, especially when it comes to their basic needs. And every child deserves the right to a full stomach and the opportunity to learn without distraction or fear of being left out. And I believe that we can create a future where no child in Hawaii ever has to sit alone, hungry, or unable to focus on their education because they don't have enough food. I believe in access to free, nutritious meals at school so they can focus on what truly matters: education, dreams, and their future. So thank you for allowing me to share my story with all of you here today. And I truly hope together that we can work towards a future here in Hawaii where every child can thrive. No child feels alone or excluded because they don't have enough to eat. So let's work together to build a future where every keiki has the nourishment they need to grow, learn, and succeed without worry. Thank you.
You're incredible. Incredible. Thank you. Mahalo for your story, and good luck at representing us. Please keep us posted. Yes. Okay, we're now going to hear from fellow teachers. So we're going to start with Christine Russo from James Campbell High School.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Can I just take a minute and shout out Asia? Asia was my student, and she brought me to tears. What an amazing speech. Thank you, Asia. So as Millie mentioned, I'm Christine. I'm a teacher at James Campbell High School, 8-year classroom teacher, science teacher, and now I am the data and accreditation coordinator at James Campbell High School. I also live in the community of Eva Beach. I want to talk for a minute about the current process for students to access free or reduced meals. So the current process is exclusionary. It requires action on the part of the parent. And so we don't know what that child's family life might be like. As Asia mentioned, there were issues going on at home. Is the parent, being proactive enough to even take action and complete this form? So that's the first thing I want to talk about. The second thing I want to talk about in terms of being exclusionary is the fact that The application is sent home to families. It's in English. And what are we doing for those families that they don't understand? They can't read that. They don't know what the form is about. And then when you go onto the, if they were to have access to the online site, there's a few options for language, but it's only English, Spanish, and Chinese. There's no translation in Hawaiian. There's no translation in Samoan. There's no translation in Ilocano, Tagalog, Chuukese, or Marshallese. So we know a lot of our families, they don't speak English, and so how are they expected to complete this form? And then the third most obvious way that this is exclusionary is the income threshold. So for a single mom of 2 kids, they have to make less than $38,597 to be eligible for free lunch. That's just a few $1,000s over the federal poverty line. And I just want us to think about that for a minute. In this economy, that's saying that, let's say the single mom of 2 makes $40,000 a year, raising 2 kids. And we're telling that mom that they are ineligible, her kids are ineligible for free lunch on a $40,000 a year salary. That is ridiculous. And if that kid or if those kids are not getting free lunch, which they aren't, right, according to that threshold, they're not, let's face it, they're not getting lunch at all, because on that salary, that child or those children are not going to be coming to school with their home lunch. They're not going to be eating at home either, because that's simply not enough. And so we know that the current system does not provide assistance to the vast majority of asset-limited, income-constrained, and employed families. These are also known as ALICE families. And according to United for ALICE, a single mom of 2 would have to make at least $78,000 just to meet basic survival needs. So we're seeing this huge gap. That's a gap between $38,000-ish and $78,000, where there's no assistance for the vast majority of families. And in my community of Eva Beach, that's about 28,000 families that meet that considered ALICE families that would not, most of whom would not qualify for assistance for free lunch. So what does this look like in the schools? This looks like kids not eating, not going to school and not having lunch. It looks like kids being denied lunch. So kids actually going to get their school lunch that day, and this time, they've met whatever the threshold is where the DOE says, okay, no more, you can't incur any more debt. Sorry, you're not eating today. And I want to talk for a minute about the impact that has on our students. A lot of times we talk about the physical impact of being hungry and not being able to learn, but I want to talk for a minute about the trauma of food insecurity. And you can ask any teacher, and they'll tell you that before any child can learn, they need to feel safe. They need to have their basic needs taken care of. And until that is met, the child is not primed for learning. If students don't know where the next meal is coming from, they are dealing with the trauma of food insecurity, and they are going to have a very difficult time succeeding in school. The last thing I want to talk about, I am now a test coordinator, so I coordinate testing for our high school students, including the state testing, which is the SBA, as well as the ACT test for our students. And, students and schools, everyone's always talking about low test scores. These kids, they're doing horrible. Look at those test scores, they're terrible. We're talking about the outputs when we look at schools, but why aren't we talking about the inputs? The inputs are that all children have a highly qualified teacher in their classroom, and all children are well fed. That's an input. If we can address the inputs, then we will see the outputs rise, right? Because children's needs are being met, and they're able to learn. So it's important we get this done. All children need free school meals at lunch across the board. Thank you again for being here.
It's important to hear from practitioners who live that experience every day with students. One thing I would also add is that, and Christine kind of brought this up, what people might not know, if students can't pay for their lunch, they go in debt. And there is something particularly awful about the idea of somebody in third grade having debt, or the idea of the kid's job is to go to school. And one thing I will talk about middle school, so if their account is overdrawn, they could miss out on class parties, they could miss out at walking for their little grade progression ceremony. And so there's real consequences to also not doing this, because kids miss out on so much more than just a meal. They miss out on feeling safe at school. So next teacher who's going to share with us is Nora Pollard from Castle High School.
Aloha, kakahiaka kako. My name is Nora Pollard. I am a proud Hawaii public school graduate from McKinley High School, where Amy Prusso was one of my teachers. And you'll hear this over and over wherever you go on island, that we are connected. We all know someone. We are invested in our communities just by being here. And it is unimaginable that we can look at a child and we can say that is not my responsibility to make sure that child is fed. Sorry. I am a high school teacher at Castle High School in Kaneohe. I have been there for the 3 years of my time as a public high school teacher, so I've gotten to know my community there a bit. As a teacher, like every other teacher that is here today, I spend money on snacks. When we go on our Costco run, I make sure to get the ones that the students have said have been good, the fig bars, the this, the that. These are the ones that are also, I find, I can get the most per the unit price. I can get the cheapest ones so that more of my students can eat. It is a regular cost in my budget, and it is something I will never change, but it is ridiculous that I have to spend that money. It is not regular, it is not consistent, it is not the healthiest food, but fed is better than nothing. What our students deserve is regular, constant access to healthy meals with local ingredients so that they can feel connected and they can see themselves represented in the food. Teachers do what we can, but we know it is never enough, even though we try. As we know, trying to survive in Hawaii, no one chooses their situation here. Families who are working hard, doing the necessary jobs for our communities are struggling. One job should be enough, but often our parents at our school communities are working multiple jobs just so that their children can have a safe home. This goes unrewarded by a livable, dignified income. While we do have means-tested things like free and reduced school meals with CHIPS programs for families below certain incomes, I know from my experience that not every family that needs this aid will get it. It is exclusionary, it is not inclusionary. Although all of our feeder schools in Kaneohe reach Title I status, saying that a certain amount of students get free and reduced lunch, Castle High School for the past few years has not gotten this, even though students from those feeder schools are coming directly to our high school. We know this is because the form does not get filled out. There are so many cracks that families can fall through here, whether it is language difficulties, lack of time from having to work to keep their families afloat, or simply forgetting. When we're relying on these programs, we decide that the cost of accidentally giving a student a lunch, even though they do not qualify, is a worse cost than simply feeding a child who needs it. We decide that starving children is not as bad as accidentally giving families money. The eligibility requirements, by definition, will never qualify those who really need simple access to food. Throughout the year, students' situations change. Even students who keep up on their balances as best they can will have that moment where their lunch is taken away from them and they have to get lunch from their friends. Of course, we take care of us, our students take care of our students, but they should not have to shoulder that responsibility. The application process is not enough. The paper is slower than the needs of our students. At our schools, when I think of school meal, I think of the fact that we have school cafeterias. We have kitchens equipped to feed our students and our communities. Our choice to not use that infrastructure is just that, an active decision to not feed those who need fed. When I say children deserve free school meals, it would be a miracle if we can get breakfast and lunch free for our students, but I mean free meals, free from means testing, free from qualifications, free breakfast, free lunch, free after-school snack, free dinner to take home, the option to take home family meals to families that we know are struggling. Instead of thinking of doing the bare minimum, we have an asset in our community that can do the work. And we need to stop thinking that we can simply fill the gaps and that we can really go beyond. Many people think that because high school students are nearly adults that their hunger is less. Many will find the idea of a hungry elementary child disturbing, but see hungry teens as a lesser issue. No child and no person in our communities should go hungry. Despite us all knowing that truth in our hearts, the evil of hunger among some is seen as a banal requirement of our society. Nothing is free, some will say. We know that. We know that it takes community investment, community work, community time, community monies to get this food, but we know that it is worth it. As I learned just yesterday watching students videos made by students in my coworker Lauren Pokipala's class, the funds required to give every student free meals would total only in the tens of millions, and to put that in scale, that would only be about 1% of the DOE budget. It would be pennies on the dollar, and in the state budget, it would be fractions of pennies on the total. It is a negligible amount of money for a world of good. With our students fed and seeing that the point of society is to feed others, their minds would be able to do the work of helping us create the world we all deserve. Their hearts would know what we can create. Our society should function to raise our keiki up on our shoulders. I know together we can lift them to great heights, but it takes work, especially in this political moment. More than ever, we need to make sure our voices are loud and followed by decisive, willful action. Words cannot do the work meant for hands. If there are legislators who still, after the political will shown session after session, year after year for this issue, if they still do not see the dream that we are talking about, they need primaried. We need to work our community. As community members, we need to run and show them that there are other options to represent our communities, because our communities deserve better, but that better world will only come through our work. Mahalo for your time.
I love that she referenced teacher Lauren Pokipala's testimony. We actually clipped it and put on our HSTA government relations page on Instagram, and that page has been shared for her testimony in front of the House Education Committee 41,000 times. So you can't tell me it's not a super important issue. Now we're going to welcome mother of Waipahu Elementary student who's going to go ahead and share with us. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Aloha, everyone, and warm Pacific greetings. My name is Angel Naea. I am just a mom, but being a mom is the sole and only reason why I need to be here today. Looking at the faces in the crowd, I am so thankful that you care about my children. And because you care about my children, I will also care about your children and your children's children. So I'm reaching out to everyone, thank you so much, that is willing to hear, especially our superintendent, who I'm very proud of because I am a product of Waipahu High School. So I'm very proud of Mr. Hayashi, But also, I would love for him to hear me and hear his former Waipahu student advocate for this issue. My kids go to Waipahu Elementary School, and Waipahu Elementary School is a Title I school. If you don't know, I think we all know, because we're all teachers and parents, Title I schools are schools with surrounding communities that are considered socioeconomically challenged. What this means is, like we have said and we have reiterated throughout this platform, is children who probably don't have to worry about food at school, but they will most definitely have to worry about food when they go home. I have brought mothers with me that also work in surrounding areas at Honowai Elementary, August Aarons Elementary, and Waipahu Elementary, and we are so honored and so thankful to be here. For me, when my children are fed, I am able to focus as well. When you feed a child, you feed a whole village. And let me paint you a story. When I drop off my kids to school and they can eat lunch, I can go to school, I can focus on my studies. And because I can focus on my studies, I can also be a better daughter to my parents. I can take them to their appointments and everything else like that. It's all a domino effect, but it all starts at the level of our children. And our children, for free meals for them is also beneficial for us all. Thank you so much.
You're amazing. Thank you. Mama to mama. Thank you. Nobody gets things done like mamas. So super grateful to all the mamas who are here today fighting for this issue. But even better, we have a little guest of honor here, so we're going to now hear from her daughter. So I'm going to bring you the mic over here. Do you want to stand up? Okay. Yeah. Are you okay right here? Okay. Say your name nice and loud, okay?
Aloha avau ahaukia. Hele ike kula kaya puni o ainue nue. Aloha au ike free school meals for our keiki. No ka mea a'ohe keiki have like food at home. They don't have much money to have. And the only thing that to eat is at school, not at home.
You did amazing. You did amazing. Great job. I said it before, I'll say it again. If the kids can be brave enough to advocate, all of us adults need to show up for them. So now you have some amazing students that you're going to hear from who are going to tell you about their experience. So we're going to start with Hakea. Oh, is that? Yeah, Hakea? No? Okay, just kidding. Marcelly, can you go ahead and get us started? Are you okay here? You want to stand here where they can see you? Wherever you're comfortable.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marcelly Manley. I'm in the 7th grade at Alima Intermediate at 13 years old. I grew up in Eva Beach. With the cost of living, I've seen how hard it is to pay for meals and be able to eat lunch at school. I've seen many of my classmates have to go hungry because their parents couldn't put the money in their accounts that they needed. I come from a family of 6, and at one time, my parents were paying for 4 kids' school lunches. Can you imagine 4 kids needing school lunch every single day on a limited income? The reduced pay income level is weird due to the fact that my parents make $8,000 more than the required pay, but they aren't including the taxes that are taken from all of their checks. On top of that, my mom and dad work super, super hard to make the extra money just for us to be able to eat lunch. I'm hoping that this will work, and with free lunch, this can help my family be able to afford living in this beautiful place I call home.
Proud teacher moment because she goes to my school, so that's pretty awesome. All right, next up, do we have Rylan? Come on, Rylan.
Hello, everybody. My name's Rylan, and I'm an 8th grader at Dalton Intermediate. I came here to address a point. We all have school food. We either love it or dislike it. And whether you like it or not, it's an important part of the day. And it sucks when it's taken away. Why? Because teachers, they expect us students or any student to complete their work. And without proper nourishment, we can't do that. My days in school are pretty laid back and average. There's days where I get off track, but once you take away my lunch, that's where I draw the line. In school, I usually hang out with friends, socialize, and have fun. But it really hurts when I can't get my beloved lunch because you know my ID. I get you need to know that I go to the school, but just because I don't have an ID, that doesn't mean you should take away my lunch. And just because you did that, now my teachers are nagging me all about, why aren't you doing your work? Or why are you acting like this? I know you expect me to do my work, but how can I if I didn't even have my lunch? It pains me to see myself or others not get their lunch. On the days that I do get lunch, it sucks to see when others don't. While I'm here enjoying my lunch, I see others sitting outside, wishing they had what I had. I wish I could lend them some food, but you cannot take any food outside. Finish it now. Doesn't it pain you to take away my lunch? Does it? I don't think you like taking it away, but that's what you are told you have to do. Thank you.
Next up, we have Sadie.
Hi everyone, my name is Sadie Walker and I am a 6th grader at Mililani Middle School in Central Oahu. I believe it is important for all students to receive free school lunches. Parents do their best, but sometimes there isn't enough money in the account for students to buy lunch. So then, in my school, they have to sit in another section for those with home lunches, except without any lunch. Trying to focus and concentrate in class is already challenging. But when you're hungry, all you can think about is food. There are also families who don't qualify for free lunches, but they can barely afford to put money in their child's account. This adds a huge worry for those kids wondering if they can eat that day or not, or trying to not eat because they feel guilty spending their parents' money. No child should have to feel this burden. And for those who receive free lunches, they may feel embarrassed and self-conscious at times because of fear they might be judged by their peers for being poor or different because their families can't afford school lunches. This may not be true, but there's a lot of peer pressure kids are dealing with on a daily basis. My friend, who gets free lunches, says she hates scanning her name tag because the screen shows she gets free meals. I can tell by her face that she's embarrassed because others can see the screen. This may not sound like a big deal to some people, but school can be a very stressful and difficult place for many of us, and the last thing any of us want to feel is different or not good enough. This is why making it possible for all students to receive free lunches will get rid of school hunger, which helps us have a better learning experience, help families with their money problems, and maybe help us see ourselves as equal to others, which is what we truly are. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and everyone here for showing your support.
You were amazing. Great job. Great job. Really was. I think I'm just digesting everything they were saying, and it truly is those moments from the mouths of babes, right? If they are here telling us what they need, it's our job as the adults, as the lawmakers and the teachers and the community members to make sure that we show up for them. So we're going to move to the portion of the program where we're actually going to speak to our leaders, and we're so grateful that you came with us today. We had planned to ask some questions at the Department of to the Department of Education and allow our lawmakers to respond. However, since the DOE is not present here today, we'd like to invite our legislators to respond directly to the questions that we were going to talk about in this forum. First up, I'm going to introduce Representative Trish LaChica. She's been a champion of the issue for several years. Okay, Representative LaChica, in your current role as Vice Chair of House of Education, you've had the opportunity to hear testimony from a lot of folks as well as the DOE. What are you hearing from the community, and why is this issue important to you? So you're welcome to stand up here or move or whatever's comfortable, Rep. Thank you for being here.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you. Such an honor to be here today, and mahalo for having me. And it's also thank you to Christy for letting me go first, as in her parentheses in her email. Let's have Trish go first so she can bring in the positive energy, yellow highlight, 3 exclamation points. So thank you, Christy, who's sitting there in the back. I'm Trisha Chica. I represent the beautiful communities of Central Oahu, so Mililani, Waipio Gentry, and Core Ridge. Do we have any Mililani High School Mililani Trojans in the house? Anyone from Mililani? Can I see your hands? Yes, awesome. I also, as Millie mentioned, I have the honor of serving as the vice chair of the House Committee on Education for the last couple of years. But I've had the greater privilege of actually chairing the committee on February 11th when we heard and passed House Bill 757, our universal free school meals. And in the past couple of years, I was there in committee when we went through hundreds and hundreds of pieces of testimony online. And first, I just wanted to say thank you. Can I please just if any one of you has submitted testimony on any free school meals bill 757, 424, or Senate Bill 1300 this past session, can you please stand? Please stand. Stand. Come on. If you submitted testimony written, online, okay. Can we please recognize, give them a warm hand? Thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have our Castle High School students, our Kalaheo High School students? If you showed up in person in the Hawaii State Capitol to testify in support of this bill, and you took your time out of the day to testify in committee in person, can you please stand to be recognized? Advocates as well, anyone? Please, come on, I know, come on, I see you guys, come on, Young Hee, who else? HSTA, who else was here? Come on, can we please recognize those folks, Daniela? Nate, okay, thank you, okay. So, just thank you, because these stories that we've heard were so incredibly powerful. It's brought tears to my eyes, to our committee's eyes. It's broken my heart. I mean, I want to share a quick story. I was born and raised in the Philippines, proud Filipina, wearing my pride right here. But, raised by a single dad, grew up in poverty too. And I remember, just like what some of our kids had shared, just also feeling that, that fear and that shame and that dread whenever lunch and recess would come, because I grew up in a small town, a small school, and it was so small we didn't even have a cafeteria. And I'd had to dread lunch and recess because, one, everyone would have like the pink, nice lunchbox with the cartoon characters, and I would have one of those hand-me-down, bulky vintage Coleman like lunch boxes. Do you remember those? Like ugly, right? And I would have to bring that out. And then second, my dad, single dad, love him, but like he didn't know how to cook. So I would have the stale, like dry rice and like this awful piece of meat would pass off as lunch. And I would just like be jealous of everyone else's lunch. And I would remember just thinking to myself, like, why do I have to be that kid? Why do I have to be that kid why can't I be those other kids with the nice Tupperware and the nice fluffy rice? Like, having to be 7, 8, 9 years old and being jealous of other people's lunch. And I share this with you because I understand firsthand just how you carry that fear, that shame, and that embarrassment. And, let me be clear. No student should have to feel embarrassed because their family struggles to pay for lunch. No student should have to be forced to return their meal tray because their meal account was empty. No teacher should have to take more money out of their paycheck so that they can, fill groceries so that their kids would have a snack. Instead, right, we should make sure that every one of our students feel valued, feel nurtured, and feel that we are investing in their future. And in committee, so in the Education Committee, we did pass House Bill 757, we passed House Bill 424, but this past week, we also passed Senate Bill 1300, and that's the final bill that's still moving through session this year when all the bills had already crossed over from the House and the Senate. And we made a step further. We actually amended the bill, so we changed the bill so that we would make sure that not only those who are on reduced price lunch would get free meals, but we made sure that anyone making up to the 300% poverty level, anyone making up to $100,000 will get free meals. So, yes. We fought for that, we negotiated for that. And so from what was shared earlier, because we know the federal rules don't work for us, so $47,000 now is the threshold. So now we're hoping to cover up to $100,000. So I want to say this because it is important to us, the chair of the House Committee, Representative Justin Woodson. And this final thing I wanted to share, we committed for this to be our #1 priority this year. Just the same week when we heard House Bill 757, it was also the week for our deadline to submit our committee's budget priorities. We pass and put the state budget together every year. So we were working many, many hours. We were reviewing all of the Department of Education's budget requests. Those are hundreds and hundreds of pages of tables. We looked at governor's budget, and we looked at every single education bill that had appropriations in it. So if there's funding requests in all of those bills, some of those bills were Representative Woodson's bills. Some of those bills were mine. In the end, neither of those bills made it to the #1 priority, because you know what we both decided to make our #1 priority that year? We said that we would fund EDN 400 and make House Bill 757 our #1 priority for universal free school meals. Yeah. And we told ourselves, we're like, are we gonna do this? We're like, are we gonna do this? We looked at each other and said, I think this is the year to fight for it. Okay, if you're gonna fight for it, I'm gonna fight for it. And we fist bumped each other. And when we turned in our budget, it felt really, really good. And we know it would be difficult because of the federal climate, but it was the right thing to do. And so it's just a couple of us, and it's just my colleagues here, Congresswoman Takuda, my fellow representatives, Representative Hussey, Representative Matayoshi, and Representatives Peruso, as well as Councilmember Tyler Dos Santos Tam. But we're just a handful, but we really need all of you. We need your continued voices, this collective movement to keep going to help us push this through the finish line. So just in closing, just want to share with you what I shared when we passed House Bill 757 out of committee. And that's, a well-fed child is a child ready to learn. And when every single child gets the same meal, there's no stigma, there's no shame, and there's no child left behind. So, mahalo.
Thank you, Representative La Chica. All right, next up, Representative Peruso. Thank you so much for joining us. We know the issue of school meals is near to your heart for a variety of reasons, and one of these is improving school meal quality. We've heard from some leaders that are against funding universal free meals because students waste food or food does get wasted. So our question to you today is, should this be a reason not to feed hungry students, and what are some of the ways that we can address the food waste concerns in our communities?
So thank you so much for that question. I think first I would say that I struggle with that question a little bit because the assumptions that underlie it don't really resonate with me. It feels like that question comes from a place of perhaps valuing efficiency over equity and maybe cost over care. But I will also say that, I would encourage folks who have that kind of question to do a bit more homework and to really look at the work that we've already done in Hawaii. So as a former DOE teacher and a mother, I have paid really close attention to the issue of food in education because I've seen it directly impact my students. And when I was fortunate enough to be at Mililani High School and we were part of the Aina Pono program, and a pilot project. And what that project produced was a report that tells us precisely how we can deal with this question of potential waste. And really, you have to go at the questions of participation, like why do students want to eat the school meals? And so oftentimes we have to think about food as part of building community. So in schools, schools are not factories. We're not producing widgets, you know? We're building communities of intention. And with that, food is a really important way of expressing our love, our care for our students. So what I saw happen with the Ainopono project was that because students were asked to participate in the menu development, they were asked to offer feedback. The students did studies around the waste produced and how to minimize that waste. And as a result, the whole conversation on campus and the behaviors on campus shifted dramatically. So I think that when we see students bringing food into this community kind of process, community building process, and they understand themselves to be part of this web of mutuality, then there's a new respect for food and a new responsibility to treat that food with reverence. And what we saw with the Ainopono project was that you know, our school cafeteria workers were also transformed in this process. So you had school cafeteria workers in our production kitchen that also produces for the complex, producing meals from scratch, from local ingredients, and you could smell the food cooking all day. And that was something that the students talked about. They were like fighting to get in line early. The lines wrapped around the cafeteria to get to the cafeteria to be the first one to, you know, get the meals and make sure, you know, that you had time to eat because the line was so long. And that kind of enthusiasm really translated to transforming our culture of food at the high school at that time. And it's really these small steps. I mean, what my preferred approach when we do this farm to school work, I think many people know that my preferred approach is this decentralized approach, so that we're more connected to our food. We're more connected to the farmers that are producing it. And the students understand themselves to be connected to the cafeteria workers and the farmers. And it brings everybody much closer together and they feel cared for. So it's not just a simple biological matter of providing nutrition. It's also the way in which we deliver these meals matters. The how really matters. So not only you know, I think it's really important that we demand universal free school meals and also demand to be part of the conversation around the how. So because we understand our why is not just, you know, making sure that we're efficient, right? And making sure that we're addressing the issues of costs, but trying to better understand how we can build a transformative culture for our kids and to help our students become leaders. So I think food plays a really important part of that, and I hope that this conversation continues, and I'm hopeful about this session since it is a priority for the House, and I look forward to seeing the conversation as it moves forward. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Representative. Next up, we're very lucky to be joined with Representative of the city. So we're trying to get everybody involved in this conversation because it takes all stakeholders. So next up for Councilmember Dos Santos Cham, school meals historically have been a state issue. And we're just curious, what is the city's role, if any, and why is this issue important to you specifically? Mahalo for being here.
Thank you. Well, thanks for letting me be here, and I do recognize that most of this conversation is focused on the state, which of course the state runs the DOE and runs the school lunch program and all of that. I come here from a perspective of the city. I represent the same people. I represent the same kids, from Kaka'ako to Kalihi, many of whom, as we've heard, go home hungry and go throughout the school day hungry. And that hurts me, and that makes me feel very sad and very much that we need to do something about it. So earlier this year, we as a City Council passed Resolution 25-02, which calls on the state and urges the state to pass universal school lunches for all the same reasons we've talked about today. I think that was an important message that we as the 9 council members support this endeavor, and hopefully it can come to fruition. The role of the city, though, is one that you might not think about, and that's during the summertime. And so during the summer, there's a summer meal program. It's funded by the federal government. We'll get to the federal part in a second. But our parks are often a site for distribution of free meals. These are programs where kids can show up. There's not the little screen and the whole business of paying and going into debt for this. This is how the program really should be all year round, right? And so this is also something that's really important for us. We depend on the collective. We depend on federal funds to make this happen, but it also depends on the city making our parks available, the city staff being available, and that's something that we need to make sure continues during the summertime, because that's when a lot of kids also go hungry, because there's not the opportunity to go to school. There's not a teacher that they see every day checking in on them. And so that's really what we'd like to focus on. I am very concerned about what's going on the federal side. I know Rep. Takuda, as well as our colleagues, are fighting as hard as they can, and hopefully there's some sense that goes in on the national level, especially because it's agriculture. These are farmers. These are all people who make our economy go. But that's my perspective on the city side, and it is all hands on deck, federal, state, and city. So thank you.
Thank you for that answer. Next up, we have Representative Hussey. The House Finance Committee, of which you are a member, is the next stop for Senate Bill 1300 that we talked about today. So we have a 2-part question for you. One, what do you anticipate for this hearing, and what questions do you think the committee will have for the Department of Education? And how can this community here with us today make sure that the bill moves forward? So mahalo for being here.
Thanks very much, and thank you to all my colleagues and friends here. So I represent the District of Kalihi Valley, and in my community we have 2,712 kids who depend on these school lunches. So for me, this is a very important issue. You know, these are literally my neighbors that I'm thinking about. To answer your questions directly, so I think the questions that at least I will be asking of the Department of Education is kind of 2 things. One is implementation. What is the pragmatic things that the DOE is going to do to make this program successful? And I'm really interested in the farm-to-school approach that Rep. Peruso was talking about, sort of a decentralized program which integrates curriculum and learning into the process of making food. So like it shouldn't just be about calories, it's also about bringing up a whole new generation of young people who understand health and nutrition and food and INA and agriculture and how all of these things tie together into one cohesive tapestry. So the implementation thing is one piece. The second piece is cost. We're talking about money. I think a lot of the job that we do as legislators and as public servants is really thinking about the public budget. Whether it's the federal budget in trillions of dollars or the state budget in billions. It's about, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, he's in charge of the whole city and county budget, which is a really cool job to have. But what we're thinking about is resources. How to best allocate the money that's raised from the taxes that we all pay to make sure that everyone has the things that we all need. So I think this is absolutely an important investment, but those are the questions that I would be asking. And the other question was about... Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Yeah. So this gathering today is a really important step. Just letting the public know, letting the elected officials know that there is a real concern and interest and a desire for this to happen this year is really important. Public pressure and I would say public leadership is always important. You think about all the things that we depend on today, things like the weekend. The fact that we have a weekend is because unions fought for the weekend, right? And in fact, I'm a former teacher myself. I used to teach history. And one of the things that I used to talk about is that this program that we're talking about didn't start as a government program. It started as a program of community groups in Oakland, New York City. A lot of it was led by the Black Panther Party, which was part of the civil rights and human rights movement in the United States. And what those organizations did, what the Black Panthers did, was they started small. They used churches and community centers, and they just fed kids, like what Councilmember Tam was talking about. They just fed the kids who needed lunch. And eventually that idea caught on. It sparked an idea within the lawmakers and the federal government that this should actually be a national program. So it's always leadership from the people that brings about the changes that we all need. So thank you all very much for being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so we have heard from great leaders so far. We're gonna kind of save the best for last. Representative Matayoshi, you've been our primary champion introducing bills for the past 3 years to make school meals universally free. I would also say you have been kind to answer our teacher emails, because teachers can be pretty persistent, and you've always answered my emails very kindly. So our closing question today is, why is this issue so important to you, and what are the chances of it happening this year?
Good morning, everyone. I don't know about the best for last. It's a pretty high bar. I'll do my best. I'm Scott Matayoshi. I'm one of the state representatives for the Kaneohe area. I was a public school teacher. I taught 7th grade science at McKinley High and Intermediate. And that is really the reason why I introduced these bills and have introduced the bills for the past years and have fought for them. If you're a teacher, this isn't just an issue for you. You know the faces, right? You know the names of the students that you've had to feed. You know the amount of money and the effort and the time it takes to do that. And you also know when you're managing a class of 30 plus kids that 2 or 3 of them, even one of them, Mana, I'm thinking about you, even one of them could totally disrupt your entire class. That one student can ruin the education for 30 more students in that class just because they're hungry, just because they can't focus, just because last night they had a fight with their parents and they didn't have anything to eat. And that's not the fault of any other student in that classroom. That's not the fault of any other teacher trying their best in that classroom. But it is something that we can try to remedy by offering these free school meals. I remember when this idea kind of first got to me. I remember I was reading an NPR article on my phone, and I read about this legislation being proposed in other states, and I thought, that is such a no-brainer. This is such an obvious solution to the problems, or some of the problems that we as teachers have been facing. Now, when I introduced it, as a legislator, you realize that not every idea that you think is a no-brainer is really a no-brainer for everyone else. I really thank my colleagues here for their support on this issue through the years, but we certainly have had an uphill battle on this. I mean, you would think that feeding kids would be something that everyone could get behind. I may be here to get a little bit of a reality check, and everyone here obviously is behind it. I got to say, I was a little surprised. I sent out surveys to my district in Kaneohe asking who, and one of the survey questions was, do you support universal school meals for kids? Only about half of the people who responded said yes. And I had about half of them saying no, or they didn't know, but almost half saying no. There is this perception out there that this money, if we give everyone a free school meal, it would go to these families that can afford it. Me personally, I can't think of a better way to target families for relief that need it the most than working families with kids in public schools. But that is not necessarily the perception out there. So we need everyone in the community to start changing that perception, because that really helps us in the building too. I've certainly heard that argument made in the building that we have so many other great programs to fund, and they're right, but why would we be spending money on families that could afford it? So I just want to put that out there as a. I think it's easy sometimes to think that this is such a great idea, and talking to everyone in here, everyone's agreeing with you, but when you go outside, it's not necessarily that case. We do have an uphill battle to still fight, and we need you in that fight. So thank you all for being here. I just wanted to, sorry, let me bring out my notes here. Oh, So I got a really boring chairmanship this year. I'm consumer protection and commerce, which is all the banks, all the insurance companies. In addition to being a teacher, I'm also an attorney, so it fits my boring side as well. But one of the things that these companies are always complaining about, I was labor chair too for the past 2 years, so I've had a lot of experience dealing with unions, dealing with companies. Everyone is complaining that they're short of workers. And not only that, but they're always complaining that they're short of qualified, hardworking workers. Like, why aren't these public schools putting out people who can work hard and understand how to stay on time and all these. It boggles my mind that they can't make that connection between feeding kids in the classroom and getting them a good education to their own self-interest of having good workers in their companies, good workers who know how to work hard and to focus. So when we're fighting this fight, please appeal to their hearts, obviously. I mean, I think everyone in here feels it in our hearts that feeding kids is the right thing to do. But you can also appeal to their wallets. And I encourage you to try to attack this problem from as many different angles as you can. If they don't think that feeding kids is a priority, maybe they think that having a good worker is a priority. If they don't think that we should be paying for school meals for maybe families that are a little more well-off, I mean, maybe they'll understand that the person that they need to work with might not be the best because they didn't get a great education because they were sitting in their classroom hungry the whole time. So please keep fighting. The last thing I want to leave you with is, as teachers, when you get that student in your class, and we have a lot of them that are behind when they walk in your door for the first time, you don't try to teach them at the absolute, like the most complicated level of, in my case, science. You do it in incremental steps, right? You bring them along. You might need to teach them to read a little bit first before they can read the science textbook. You might need to teach them the scientific method before you can teach them biology or whatnot. It's the same thing here. Even though bills have failed for the past couple of years, it's made progress forward. It's brought this issue into the light, and it's really made it an issue that when you show up year after year, legislators take notice. We take notice. The community takes notice. The media takes notice. And we've brought this issue over the years. Even though it seems like we haven't been getting this bill passed, it's becoming more of an issue that's in the limelight. And that's really been making that forward progress that I like to see. I would love for universal school meals to pass. I introduced 757. I also introduced 424. I wanted to give us a couple of options, either the whole ball of wax, which I'd love, or at least getting those reduced school meals made free. I don't know what accountant is sitting in the DOE thinking, I got to get that 40 cents from that little kid, I don't think that's going to be balancing our budget today, but it's a step forward. Right? As long as we're making progress, that's what I want to see. When we start backsliding, that's what when this auditorium has fewer and fewer people sitting in it, that's when I'm going to be afraid. But if we can keep building this movement, I want you guys to be encouraged that it is working, that we are getting momentum, and that I really hope that we can make it to the finish line one day. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you. So where are we now? We've heard from every stakeholder we could bring into the space today with intentionality. I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for being here today. We are here to show our leaders that we will not take any more excuses. This is our community's priority. Say it again, it's our priority. Your presence, your voices, your commitment to this cause prove that we are not alone in this fight. Look at all these people here today. This is not going away. We are not going to stop demanding this for our communities, and that's why we're here. So to be clear, the conversation doesn't end here. Now more than ever, we need to come together to demand change, and change only happens when communities come together, when we turn our words into action, when we refuse to accept hunger as a reality for any child in our schools. So, here's what we talked about today. As a recap, here's what we need. The next step is to make sure Senate Bill 1300 gets scheduled and passes through the House Finance Committee. To do that, all of you who have already submitted testimony, we're going to need your encouragement to keep going to get that bill heard and get that bill through committee. So please, what you can do to help out is follow us on social media. Appleseed always shares out the links for testimony or how to stay involved. and sign up for our action alerts to help stay up to date. We know how busy when you have a hearing called, as I've learned this session, you only have 48 hours to get your testimony in and get ready. And it can be really hard for those of us to get to the Capitol, but you can also testify on Zoom, and that can be a really helpful way to communicate. We're gonna send you the instructions you need to make your voice heard and work on this bill. And as I'm Millie, as a teacher, as a mom, as a proud union member, and a free lunch kid, I am so grateful that you're here caring, standing up for our communities, because when we feed our children, we strengthen our schools, we strengthen our communities, and we have a brighter future, so let's get to work. To close, one final round of applause for all the volunteers that got you here today. Amazing people behind the scenes. I've seen a lot of phones out today. All of you who have been taking photos or videos, please tag us on social media, share it out, share it with your friends so that they can see the critical mass of support we have. If you are willing, we would like you to come to the stage for a group photo as our close for today. So come on up, don't be shy, let's get a picture. Aloha.